If there's one thing I know the San Antonio Spurs are going to do going into game three is that they are snitching. I think that they are going to be snitching their asses all the way from Oklahoma City to San Antonio because that game, game two, credit to the Thunder, they played a much better game than they did in game one, right? I think their game plan of guarding Victor Wembanyama was much I think their game plan of guarding Victor Wembanyama was a much more fruitful one in terms of a long term execution of that plan with having Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren being the main defenders on Victor Wembanyama. And I even tweeted that I think Isaiah Hartenstein was invaluable for the Thunder in the way he was playing for them. But a lot of that has to do and tie into how much physicality the refs are going to allow him in San Antonio going forward. Now, since the Spurs won game one, they now have home court advantage throughout the series. That now when you're going back to San Antonio, all that grabbing, I mean, there were so many hooks, so many different plays where it was so evident that Isaiah Hartenstein was just grabbing Victor Wembanyama and Wemby couldn't go for certain rebounds, couldn't go for blocks on certain plays. And the broadcast, they noticed so many times that it was a wrestling match between the two under the rim. And while you do want some of that playoff physicality, I mean, hooking somebody is a foul. Granted, Wemby's doing the same thing back to Hartenstein, so I guess you can't necessarily say you want it to go one way, right? You can't criticize Hartenstein for doing it. And then when Wemby's doing the same thing on the other side, it's like you kind of just view that as letting it go. I think in one of those scenarios, you want to see stars be able to do what they normally do. And I think that you're going to see criticism coming from many people vocally online because Wemby's obviously being deterred from the hooking and the grabbing that Hartenstein's doing. I think there was one play specifically that he grabbed Stephon Castle's hair, which was just like, that should have been called a flagrant, obviously. And that was one of those moments that you get back and you're like, what the heck was that, right? But I think that game plan from the Thunder was a much better game plan than having smaller players guard Wemby, because I think in game one, I mean, he goes for over 40 points, 20 plus rebounds, and you're looking at his points in the paint in comparison to tonight. He only scored 3 buckets in the paint tonight versus damn near 10 in game one, right? So that's a vast difference. And a lot of that is because of that physicality from a bigger body, shooting over a bigger body versus having a small guy on you where you can just put back your misses when you go up for a shot. I think he had a few putbacks in today's game. He had about like 2 putbacks, right, where he missed a shot and he's so athletic, so quick that he could go back right when the shot goes up. I mean, Wemby is crazy. He literally could shoot a shot where most people go after a rebound once they see the shot miss. He's going after the shot after his release of it, right? So then he's in position just to get his own tip back. But in those scenarios now, you have Isaiah Hartenstein or a Chet Holmgren that's boxing him out. That's a much bigger body that Wemby can't just reach over and get a putback dunk on or get an easy rebound on. And so these guys are weighing Wemby down with this style of defense. And I think that while it is an effective method, I think it does definitely take some leniency from the refs for it to be totally effective in a sense, right? I think if the refs are a bit tighter at that whistle, it's going to be hard to see where OKC goes from a game plan standpoint of slowing down Wemby. I think even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a little bit tripped up a little bit when the reporter asked him post game, how did he feel about how Isaiah Hartenstein's impact defensively was on Wemby, and he said he didn't think it was that great initially, and then he kind of caught himself in what he was saying. But I think why he said that he didn't think it was that great, because I think he believes possibly that a lot of the tactics that they were getting away with, I think it resulted in Isaiah Hartenstein having about 4 or 5 fouls by the end of the game. And if half of those grabs and stuff were called, the dude would have fouled out. So if you're talking about just a straight up head up matchup, obviously you can't stop greatness when it happens, but I digress. I think one of the other notes of this game is obviously Stephon Castle as well. Stephon Castle still struggling with turnovers. He had in the first game, he had 11 turnovers, I believe, 10, 11 turnovers. And then in this game, he finishes with about 8 or 9 turnovers. So he has the most turnovers. I think he's tied for the most turnovers for out the first 2 games of a playoff series, which is actually just insane, right? And it should be noted that Dylan Harper went out of this game with a leg injury, and De'Aaron Fox is still out dealing with an ankle issue. And so both teams lost players in this game, where the Thunder lost Jalen Williams to that hamstring injury that cost him to miss multiple games throughout the first and second round series of this playoffs. And it's just been a nagging hamstring for him that he's been dealing with. And now you're getting into a situation where if De'Aaron Fox doesn't come back for game 3, and if Dylan Harper's injury possibly lingers on longer into the series, this could be a scenario where the Spurs could be in trouble because Stephon Castle, for as explosive and as many plays as he can make offensively, and how great he is also as a defender on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or whomever he's going against, he has just had issues turning the ball over. And you see it in this game. One of the big keynotes for the Thunder was points off turnovers, and they had so many points off of turnovers. And you're looking at a lot of those turnovers belong to Stephon Castle. And in a game where game one, all those turnovers are kind of getting canceled out by the wide margin of rebounding that the Spurs had over the Thunder, right? Where the Spurs had almost 20 plus more rebounds than the Thunder because Wemby was just getting that many rebounds, and the Thunder were playing small against this team, and so it gave the Spurs opportunities to get more offensive rebounds and also just to beat them on the defensive boards as well. But in this game, that wasn't the case. They were more even rebound-wise. So then those turnovers really do come into effect. And you really saw it really start to bite the Spurs in the butt, especially down the stretch where there was multiple times where you had turnovers, or there was even momentum plays where you saw those turnovers really start to come back and bite the Spurs. But I think that one of the things I noted going from game one to game two now was talking about how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had to play like an MVP. And he did. He definitely showed up. He had probably one of his best games, arguably his best game of this postseason so far. Shot 50% from the field, 50% from deep. He was actually playing like the MVP they need him to be. He was making the right plays, right passes. But I will say, if I see SGA go up for another 2 on one fast break and takes it himself and fails to convert, I'm going to literally just be up beside myself. I don't know why he doesn't decide to drop the ball off whenever he's going in on a 2-1 fast break, but for some reason he always takes it himself. I don't get it. But it's one of those situations where the Thunder needed him to step up, especially in a scenario where Jalen Williams was not, especially in a scenario where Jalen Williams had to be removed from the game due to his injury, and then AJ Mitchell also goes down with an apparent leg injury of some sort. I was wondering if he was possibly cramping. That's what it looked like to me. I'm not sure. Obviously, we're going to get more details on that going into game 3, but that's just, there's so many storylines that come out of this game, right? And I think that Wemby's impact is arguably the biggest one. His impact or lack thereof. He didn't feel like he was as much of a force in the paint tonight, and the Thunder's paint scoring was way more even with the Spurs in this game. And I'm not sure if just the Hartenstein physicality was taking a toll on him, and maybe that is part of what it was, right? In this game, he played 37 minutes, but I also wonder if there are moments there where he was a bit gassed, where he had the energy to go flying back and forth in game one, because, I mean, trying to get position on a smaller guy is not as tough because you can obviously just reach over him. But when you're playing against a big guy, you have to not only get position to try and get the rebound, because if you try and just reach over that guy, it's an over the back. So you have to try and find a way to get front and center on that person to try and get an offensive rebound, try to get a putback, all those different type of things. And so there's so many different, it's just a game of chess, right? You start to notice that it's a game of chess in the end, and there's so many mental battles that are going on the basketball court that it's fun to watch. I'm not going to lie. It's very fun to watch. I think this has been the highlight series. The Knicks Cavaliers series, how that for game one ended was crazy in and of itself. But I'm really curious of how these injuries are going to end up playing a role in the next game, because, man, that's going to be very, very detrimental to the Spurs if De'Aaron Fox and Dylan Harper are unable to go. It's not confirmed yet, right? But that's going to be very detrimental to them because Stephon Castle has just not been able to rein in these turnovers. And it's going to be very interesting for the Thunder as well, because they played without Jalen Williams throughout most of the season, right? So they're kind of used to it to some extent. But now losing AJ Mitchell as well would be a heavy blow, right? Because at that point, it was noted that, or I noted at least, that there were moments there, and especially in the first half, where when the bench would come in, obviously once Wemby's off the floor, the bench comes in, the Thunder would make their runs, right? But once Jalen Williams wasn't out there, it felt like it was Jared McCain or bust. And there was times where it felt like Kason Wallace really wasn't able to find his shots. He couldn't find the openings for him to get shots, and it wasn't like, it was more so if somebody had to create a shot for him. It wasn't really his scenario where he could create his own shot or get downhill to the rim and get his own shot, even with Wemby out of the game. And then Chet Holmgren, I don't know. I tweeted about this as well. I feel as though Chet Holmgren has regressed somewhat offensively. I feel when Chet gets the ball on the perimeter, or when he's forced to dribble the ball, it's almost assuredly going to be a turnover. Unless Chet is being unless Chet is pretty much catching the ball with the decision in a spot where the decision should already be known and the decision's already be made that he's going to either shoot the ball or he's then going to create and pass it to somebody else. If Chet then has to dribble the ball and the decision is being made on the fly where he has to get to a spot to try and score or get to a spot to try and dish to somebody, he is very vulnerable to turning the ball over when he dribbles the basketball. And sometimes he gets smaller guys on him, and it doesn't look like he's comfortable trying to shoot over these guys. And I'm like, Chet, what is going on? Like, you have... I look at Wemby on the other side, and obviously Chet isn't the player that Wemby is offensively, right? But it's just such a far wide gap how one guy handles a height differential and a vast height gap when he's being guarded by smaller defenders versus the other guy. And it's almost like Chet just cowers out of it, right? Every single time. And it never makes sense to me. I watch it, I'm like, what is he doing? I don't know, man, but very interesting. Very interesting. Let me know you guys' thoughts on game 2 of the Western Conference Finals.